Welcome to another episode of A Mason's Work. I'm your host, Brian Mattocks. With me today is Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Brother Brian Mattocks. I know the fun conversation was the whole Masonic etiquette, the pleasantries and the titles. And yeah, it's always interesting being a proud Grand Lodge of New York Mason and also a plural member in the nation's capital here in Washington, D.C., getting to travel to other jurisdictions, in Pennsylvania especially, it's brother. And I love that because we're told at the very beginning, like, there's no title higher than brother. So you can just call me brother from here on out. Or Michael.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. Maybe we'll get to call each other really, exciting labels later. But for now, the one thing, we talked about this the other day, kind of always a bridesmaid, never a bride kind of thing. Welcome to being a guest on a podcast.
I know, right? Yeah. It's a good feeling.
I have some questions as a result. And one of those questions is, you've now talked to just this tapestry of Masonic experience across all of your sort of podcasting journey. And, apart from the highlights film, which you guys kind of do your own highlights reel at the end of the year, what are the real things that you've taken away as learning from this? Like across the sweep, what have you learned in this process?
Oh my gosh. So much, actually, to the point where it's very difficult to work with, brothers that are more inclined to want to read books or get into any other source of Masonic education. And they'll be like, oh, what was the latest book that you've read? And I'm like, I haven't read one that's just for my own personal entertainment. It's usually, I read the Morgan Affair book because we had Dr. Ann Bunch on and she put the book out. And so I needed to read that to prepare for the episode. We talked to Michael Scheck with Violent and Impetuous Wretch, his book on the building of King Solomon's Temple in a different perspective. So I'm all over the place. What has it done? We had talked about the Masonic Rabbit Hole. I'm sure we'll get into that. But I had a focus for a very long time in Freemasonry, a singular question or thought that I was trying to explore. And now doing a podcast is like getting to visit a virtual lodge every single time I talk to a guest, to the point where I'm really thankful as a listener of my own podcast because I don't remember some of the conversations that I have with brothers. And then I'll hear it when the podcast episode is all edited and published, which I do all of that. But to hear it when it finally drops and then be in the space of a listener for 30 minutes or so running while I'm listening to this podcast on Monday morning and going, oh, I agree with the guest, but that host, man, he has got to go.
Well, and so for those of you listening, for the examples at home, Craftman Online, as you may or may not have known, A Mason's Work has joined the Craftman Online network. We're now working together to cross sort of pollinate and help guys that are, audience listeners that are looking for more light by offering kind of different perspectives. And I think with the various guests you've had on, it must have in a lot of ways opened your sort of mind to the variations in the Masonic experience. What is that? How does that show up in, let's say, how you go to lodge?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the first season, which was really like half a season because I was delaying the podcast after we launched Craftman Online because I knew what a weekly podcast and the workload that would come with it, having somewhat of a broadcast background. I just didn't want to have a part-time job that didn't help pay the bills, as my wife describes it. So my initial guests were all brothers from my little district in the upstate New York, the Albany area. Because that was my circle. That's who I had on. And then eventually, as the time went on and the years went on and the listeners started to grow, we were very New York centric to beginning. And then we started expanding. I remember when it was the first time, we got hey, I'm a listener. I'm emailing you from the UK. I was like, wow, we finally we're international. I was so excited. What has it done? I mean, when I go to have a discussion with somebody in lodge, I usually walk away with two things. Either I'm able to share a perspective because it's baked in from other conversations that I've had with other like-minded brothers that are very intelligent and educated on certain topics. And that usually leads to me saying, hey, I want to have you as the next guest on our podcast. And I say that kind of with a smile on my voice, but it's because I like being able to share the unique Masonic experience that we all have that is very to the individual as far as being members of the craft. Where I love your podcast because you specialize in the personal development and the self-improvement aspect and taking the words that we hear in the ritual, providing some deeper context to them, and then also a practical application of putting that into everyday life. I would love to do a podcast about that, but that's not what my calling is. But to find somebody like you and be able to shine a spotlight and give you some space to share it to those that are seeking and looking for it, man, I did my job that day. And then I also get the knowledge and I get some of that insight in those perspectives. And that's really what it's all about. Like we've talked about this before. It's the beauty of being in a fraternity with like-minded men is the wisdom, the collective wisdom that can come so that you don't have to live all of those experiences. You hear about them and then you can carry them into when you make your decisions and they help guide your actions.
Yeah. It's like having a multiplier in a video game. When you take advantage of multiple lives, multiple different experiences, a bunch of different guys in your party, you can learn from the times that they screwed up or whatever. And I love that. What I'm hearing, though, is that your podcast for you is almost like a sort of virtual traveling experience. You get the benefit of like traveling without leaving your office.
Yep. And the challenge is I like to ask questions. I'm naturally curious. If I find someone or something interesting and I want to have you come on as a guest for the podcast, we usually record an hour's worth of an episode, but really only 30 minutes goes out the door for our basic podcast listener, right? So now the challenge is that I have to find 10 or 12 questions or topics of the thing that we're going to talk about, that points that we can address and get to. And that can be a challenge with some of our guests. The other challenge is on the flip side, where it's so much. And it's like, dude, we really should have made this a series because there's no way we're going to be able to accomplish this in one 30-minute sit-down episode for a listener. But yeah, it totally was the thing that kept me connected and kept me driven in Masonry. Doing the podcast and also getting to be the lodge education officer, to me, were the two things that kind of reignited my Masonic spark, because I got to that point after 5 years in the craft where I was like, this officer line, there's a lot of politics in it. I don't really want to be doing all this stuff. This isn't what I really thought Masonry was. It was kind of becoming like a club and less of a fraternity aspect of it. It wasn't becoming this enlightenment group that I had thought it was to be. But then getting to work with the people that were coming into it, that were asking questions, especially in that early part of their experience, because they're going through the degree work, getting to go back into the ritual, having those common ground conversations. I'm like, this is what is exciting and interesting to me. The other challenge, honestly, is also talking to guests who were now non-Masons. That's my other big thing to talk about, knowing that they don't know what I know, and how can I have a conversation with them about a Masonic theme or topic and interweave that in there and still connect with them. And even better yet, also understanding, and I'm sure you get this too, we have listeners that are not Freemasons, that somehow just like what we are talking about, and they're getting some sort of enrichment in that as well. And also being cognizant of, okay, I don't want to get too much into the inside Freemasonry talk here, but I do want to be inclusive so that others can get some of this light that I'm sharing, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think it's important. A lot of folks get it wrong about what's secret and what isn't. And you'll see in some of the recent episodes I've recorded a little bit deeper dive into the secrecy side of the conversation. But what I'm hearing from what you're saying, though, is that you've been using your podcast not to tie this back to the work, but you're using this as a practice for rhetoric. You're using this as a practice for cultivating a stronger understanding of how you show up with the brethren, because you have to do a fair amount of this kind of on the fly translation from one level of understanding to another. Is that, is that difficult for you to do? It seems to come to you naturally kind of in the moment.
It was an evolution, honestly. So I started writing for the Midnight Freemasons before COVID. That's what everybody uses as a benchmark back in the normal times. Probably in like 2017, 2016, 2017, I think is when I first started sending the blog articles. I used to listen, and I still do. I listen to RJ Robert Johnson's, Right Worshipful Brother Robert Johnson's Whence Came You podcast. And when I would make the 40-minute drive from Schenectady to Albany to go to visit a lodge or something, that was just, it was my companion during that. I was like, oh, it's so cool. There's even podcasts for Freemasons. And I would hear him read the articles from the Whence Came You blog. And I thought like, oh, maybe someday I'll have an idea or something that I could write or contribute to. And then I did. And I sent it. And I'm like, hey, this was pretty good. Like, you did a good job writing this. I was like, well, thank you. I consider myself a bit of a digital content person as a marketing professional. So they published it. And they're like, hey, can you write another one? And I'm like, what would you like me to write it on? They're like, whatever comes to your mind. And then I started approaching Masonry a little bit differently because I wanted to share that experience. And honestly, the reason why I got into podcasting, not to spoil blogging, because I think it's super important, but I realized two things. People weren't reading blogs anymore. They just weren't. And that a podcast gave me a chance to express more of a personality. And also the style that I do is different. So I do, and you're now kind of getting into the guest-based, discussion interview format. And I just found it way more interesting to hear what the other person had to say than what I was thinking about things, and that I could kind of still help steer a conversation. But there's a reason why I'm having this person on as a guest, because I want my listener to hear what this person has to contribute to a larger conversation.
So I'm kind of having a geeking out moment here because this is what I do. But for a lot of folks, it's hard to. They put boundaries around what they think Freemasonry is, and what I'm hearing is this is your Freemasonry. It's being out there, doing this rhetorical practice, working with others to bring light, working to translate between different audiences. There's a bunch of stuff that happens between the gavels in a lodge room. And for the vast majority of people, that's a business meeting. This is really where your Freemasonry is meeting the world. It's out here doing this stuff. Have you considered that? Is that part of the way you did this, or did you just kind of organically lump into it?
No, it was a big, one of the goal thoughts, I guess, a key point that I wanted to make was that our podcast, the Craftman Online podcast, is really, the idea is to share the experience of being a Freemason with others, and to create. It also kind of goes to what the core principle or the core mission of Craftman Online was. So I could take you back to that day. So that was like March of 2020. There was this thing called the pandemic that was going on. And in New York State, where I lived at the time, literally parts of our state were shut down. We couldn't even travel between counties. You'd always have to turn on the news to see if it was safe to go outside that day because of the COVID pandemic. The problem that we had was our lodges were closed. So brothers felt extremely disconnected. So my business partner, most worshipful Stephen Adam Rubin, who's the Grand Master of Masons of New York now, at the time, I believe was our proctor, or was getting ready to run for the Grand Treasurer's position. And he reached out to me because he saw a blog that I had written for the Midnight Freemasons and was like, hey, why are you writing for these guys in Illinois, Indiana, and the Midwest? Like, how come you're not submitting this to our Grand Lodge? And I'm like, I didn't even know that we had one. And so that was the initial conversation where it was like, well, how do we create digital content and a way for brothers to connect and get together? So ideally, our whole mission was to find a way to bring some form of Masonic education or programming via Zoom meetings, which everybody was turning to the Zoom webinars, on a consistent basis until our lodges could reopen and brothers could reconnect again in person. So just like every other brand that was going through COVID, we saw massive spikes in our Zoom webinar registrations. It started out with like 10 and then shot all the way up to like 300 at some point, and then almost nosedive once lodges opened back up to back down to 10, to where we don't even do them anymore because there's no point of them. But our brand evolved to always have the blog articles to allow a platform for brothers that don't have to feel like they're a professional writer. We have a great editing team that goes through our editorial review process that helps them with the formatting and the words and everything. But then we also have a podcast, which is the audio presentation of either a Masonic education topic or an interesting brother, or hopefully a combination of the both as a guest. And that was the real delivery that I wanted to have, was that when people, I don't want people to ask, what is Freemasonry? That's not the question. I want them to start thinking, and we're like-minded in this, is like, well, what does Freemasonry mean to me? And what does it mean for me to be a Freemason? And how can I be a better one? And those are the larger questions that I want our guys, our brothers, to start moving to seeking those answers and solutions. And it's only going to happen if they have more voices in the conversation.
Yeah. But that distinction, this is your Freemasonry, I think is clutch, right? Because a lot of guys think that my Freemasonry is becoming junior warden or becoming senior warden, or, being a lodge secretary or things like that. And that is part of the sort of responsibilities in a lot of ways of being a Freemason, but it isn't sort of your Freemasonry per se, right? The place where all of this knowledge, training, and education that we do in lodge and in places like your podcast really meets the world is how Freemasonry expresses itself in the environment. And I think if we don't start pointing that out, people get this preconceived notion that, like, well, if all I'm going to do is pay bills and vote on motions, like, that's not the place for, becoming a better man, because I'm not going to, one vote on the electricity bill isn't going to solve for X on that.
Right. Yeah. I had a really good quote from a brother one time that, he said, the experience for some can be, I joined Freemasonry for personal enlightenment and self-development, and I left with dinner receipts and lapel pins. And that's really sad if that's, somebody's Masonic experience. And I know we all know of people in cases where that has been like that for them. So yeah, I guess to a point, like, this is that opportunity. I've talked about it with just about anyone that'll listen, that in every generation, Masons at that time have that opportunity to leave their mark on the fraternity, not just to say this is what Freemasonry means now during this time when we're here living and breathing, but hopefully we carry it and make sure that the tradition can be passed forward to the future generations that are seeking this light and seeking these answers. Some of that comes directly out of our ritual, but what does it really mean? It's like, okay, well, I want to get out of passive Freemasonry. I want to get into personal Freemasonry. I want to get Freemasonry into an action verb. And that is very transformative, because it's going against what some of the traditions that we've had, honestly, in Freemasonry for years has been, is to kind of stay out of the spotlight. And now you have blogs and podcasts about Freemasonry all over the place. You turn me on to things that I need to improve on my YouTube game for Craftsman Online. And we are present in so many places, but is it the valid information? Is it, and that's up for the listener and the user ultimately to decide, right? But Napoleon's first rule of battle was to be present. And so that's how I feel about things, is for Freemasonry to continue to advance. My job is to make sure that it's present in conversations, that it's there, and then it's up for the person at that time. Maybe it's not right now for that man to become a Freemason, or for the woman who's considering, joining the other parts of what they can do in our organization. But at some point, maybe it will be right for them. And then they know where to take the steps from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. One of the things that we talked about kind of outside of this conversation was this idea that you had a kind of a lodestone that you were using to help drive your discovery process. That's right. I used lodestone in a sentence.
I'm running that down. That's my new Brian word of the day. Lodestone. Is it LODE or LOA? Okay.
No, DE. There you go. Right. So you were using that as essentially a place to kind of seek refuge, perhaps, or in, relative to the kind of administrative experience, a place where you could always go and the well was always full. I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit more about that with our listeners / viewers / whatever.
Yeah, I think what happens is we got into a discussion on what is esoteric, and everybody kind of has and I know that's a divisive word. And hold on, the lightning bolt that's going to come strike me down here because I've invoked the word. Lodestone is resting his lightning bolt powers at the moment. He's regenerating. So it was. My thing is that it came when I was walking up the steps to, and I'm just saying because this is when it happened. I was going to a lodge meeting on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at the House of the Temple here in the nation's capital for Colonial Lodge number 1821, which I refer to as my fun lodge. I love hanging out with those guys. Why? Because they used to be all members of George Washington University. That used to be one of the requirements to join that lodge. They've now since opened the doors to anybody that would like to affiliate. I like going there because they're really smart guys. They have super deep philosophical conversations. And it's like being back in philosophy class 101 in college. I love it. I feel so much smarter when I go there. And they're just cool dudes. They're just awesome, down-to-earth guys. They have a cool tradition. They go to Annie's, which is a nice little cafe restaurant. Within walking distance afterwards, they hang out as brothers. Like, it is an awesome, fun experience. And I'm walking up the steps and I hear a familiar voice behind me. And it's, at the time, the Grand Master of DC Masons, Most Worshipful Jacob Bressman. And he's like, Brother Arce, I didn't expect to see you here today. And I'm like, Brother Bressman, yeah, this is my fun lodge. And he started laughing. He's like, what do you mean by fun lodge? And I'm like, because I've discovered what the word esoteric is by coming here. And it's good and sad. It's bitter and it's sweet. And it's this. It's that I understand that this is a really special, cool, unique experience. And that's what makes it special to me. But what also makes it special is the other guys I know that come here because they think it's special too. And that's kind of a bit of like what Freemasonry is. Like, we all have men or people who have an interest in Freemasonry in our lives that they never take the next step to become a member for whatever reason. Like my younger brother, for example. Anytime he travels to any other city, he passes a Masonic building, he takes a picture of it to me. And I'm like, David, why don't you just join? And he's like, I work in the evenings. It's hard for me to. Well, they have daylight lodges. No, we can't do that. You just keep teasing, man. Okay, someday it'll still be there. But we realize that when we join this thing, it becomes special to us. And then once we start getting into the little elements or the parts of the degree that we really identify with, like, I like this symbol, or this emblem means something to me, or this line or word, or being in this officer chair is special to me. Now I want to explore the deeper meanings of that. And I'm going to start, getting into my little rabbit hole here and just like really digging. And then I want to find someone that I can share this exciting moment with. And there's nothing worse than when you have this and you come to your lodge or a lodge brother that you really like, and you tell them something, and maybe they're mid cocktail, they're like, "Oh, that's nice," and you're like, nobody else gets it. So it's nice to find these places, and some of it's in podcasts or some of our other groups that we have, where you can make these connections with the super fans, the super esoteric guys, and then we can share these experiences and really geek out about Freemasonry. It's why, and I'll end on this point here. It's why my wife absolutely, when we are leaving the car for a Masonic dinner or gathering, forbids me to talk about lodge at the dinner table. Now it's going to happen anyways, because she knows where it's going to go. We're going to start talking about these things, and it's just blah, 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 blah to them because it's not special to them, but it is to us.
So when you were discovering this rabbit hole for you, how did you know you were onto it?
So it was the first Masonic question that I ever asked. And it was the answer that, can I say pissed me off? I just did. Sorry. Do the old radio trick. Is it okay to swear on this podcast? It really pissed me off. And then it was like, you know what? I will take your challenge and raise you another one. So I was sitting in lodge. We were studying we call it in New York, the historical lecture. It's the EA, part of the EA degree. where we talk about, how a lodge is situated, how it's decorated. And there's a point within a circle. It's all part of that beautiful long part of the lecture that comes at the end of the first degree.
In your jurisdiction.
In my jurisdiction, yes. In New York and in DC. I don't know how it flows in PA. But it's just a paragraph. And it was so insightful. It was like reading a fortune cookie or The Art of War by Sun Tzu. It was like so much knowledge in so many few words. And I asked a brother at the time, like, so if this circle is like anywhere, like where would it be in the lodge? Because everything that we're talking about is supposed to relate to Freemasonry here. And his answer was, well, where do you think it is? I'm like, well, a certain point within a circle that does it. Is it where the altar is? Because that could be a point. And there's a circle and there's parallel lines and all this. He's like, it could be. And I'm like, okay, so could it also be us? Like we are the individual points within a circle and interacting? He's like, it could be that too. And I was like, well, which one is it? And he's like, well, I think you should go read this book. And it wasn't Secret Teachings or Pike. It wasn't a super heavy book. But all I heard was go read a book. And I was like, that is not happening. That's not why I joined Freemasonry, to read books. No. So I discovered this brother on YouTube through his YouTube videos. I think he's from Montana. He's called the Backyard Freemason. And if his videos are still on YouTube, they've got to be at least 15 years old now. And it's like this cool, trippy, like just out in nature kind of vibe. And he's just talking so peacefully and he's giving you and it was his lodge program that he filmed on his phone or whatever years ago and shared. And I was like, well, now I've got even more questions about this point within a circle, because I thought I was just going to get a question asked, question answered, we move on. And that's when I realized that I was in a rabbit hole. When after that YouTube video, now I'm searching other YouTube videos on it. Now I'm getting books on ancient Egypt, which I would have never picked up from the library ever in my life before, because I just had questions and I just needed to read a couple chapters or a few lines to get this, which then took me here. And it kind of looked like I had a serial killer map in my head with the red strings that were going to all these places. And that's when I realized that I had discovered and fallen into my own Masonic rabbit hole, but I loved it. And I couldn't wait to talk with other people about this. And the benefit of it is thankfully a point within a circle. I come across so many brothers and they're like, oh, that's my favorite Masonic symbol too. And I'm like, dude, that's like my bat light. Let's talk. And then we can get into it. And they're like, oh, have you ever thought about this? And I'm like, yeah, because there's infinite answers to what this thing is. And that's what also makes it so special for me. And the other thing is, I'm never going to want to stop learning about it. I'm always going to want to hear people's perspectives on it because I love it.
I think you illuminate a couple of really distinct and meaningful understandings, not just about Freemasonry, but about life, right? In the vast majority of your life experience, it's not about ever you're never done. You've never figured it all out ever. Right. It's not like, oh, well, now I know everything there is to know about breathing. So I guess I can just quit that. Like, that's not how any of this works. And the other thing that I've kind of want to note from what you said is that the Freemasonry, the camaraderie, the experience of Freemasonry emerges while you're on that quest. That the camaraderie that matters, the reason behind your fun lodge isn't, they didn't sit down with like the quest, let's have a fun lodge. They started doing the work either individually or in small groups. And then in the process of doing that work, cleaved together as a group. That the fraternal experience was emergent from the quest itself. And I think that's something a lot of folks don't get to.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't even know if they would use the term themselves that they're a fun lodge, because most people would be like, oh, a fun lodge. They must have like cool parties. They have a bar in their lodge. Okay. That's what some people think fun is these days. No. Fun for me is waking up on a Saturday morning at 8:00, putting on a dark suit and tie, driving 40 minutes into DC from my house here in Northern Virginia, dealing with traffic, finding a place to park, walking up the stairs to the house of the temple, getting to have coffee and donuts with these guys, and then walking upstairs into the lodge room and sitting through their normal business meeting to get to the education program. And like, yes, this is why I'm here. I invested 3 hours of my life that day to get to this point now and start the clock. This is the best time. That is the thing that I think is kind of missing when we talk about the craft, especially to others when we try to promote it outside. So it's like marketing people. I think this is the challenge, because it's like, oh, Freemasons, where men belong. Freemasonry, making good men great. Freemasonry, ask one to be one. And pictures of guys of different demographics and different settings, like hugging it out and being bros and having a good. Yeah, but you just touched on a really key thing is that so many people don't really know what they're about to get into or what opportunities exist. But those are the things that we need to be talking about, are the important lifelong connections, are the opportunities for personal development, not just self-improvement in yourself, but learning from others collectively and trusting those people and bringing that in. And then exposure to things that you didn't even think you'd ever want to learn about. I've got like 5 books on Buddhism behind me. I would have never, ever been into learning anything about that practice. Or
despite your resemblance to the statues.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm confounded. So,
yeah,
you point to something that is just, I think, so fundamentally powerful about the experience itself. And I think I want to put words in your mouth, but one of the things that I've noted about my own experience, when I am excited about a thing, I can't wait for the next one. I'm thinking about it between meetings. I'm spending time, discretionary effort, right? These are all hallmarks of engagement in a corporate environment. Are your employees spending discretionary effort? I'm spending my own free time thinking about these things to bring it back to my guys so that they are enriched. It's like we're all explorers going away to try and find this undiscovered country, and bringing back the map and saying, hey, listen, I went west. I found this. Did you find anything like this on your quest in the direction that you traveled? And that process, that sharing process where we get to do that with each other, again, is a vital distinction that separates this from any other social group that you're going to have. Now, there are communities development. I'm not trying to dismiss that there's opportunities like that out there, but your experience, the way you describe that experience, is absolutely encapsulates the entirety of what we're trying to do here, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And to the other point, when you talked about having the opportunity for that, whether it's part of a lodge program, whether it's the conversations that happen maybe in the coalition room before we have our meeting, maybe that's when dinner is served, right? Or maybe they're the old parking lot conversations that happen afterwards, or a text chain or a signal chat, or however your lodge communicate, like those, having those moments, whether they're structured and identified or just the ability to have, that's what keeps guys engaged, right? I am the worst brother to have come visit your lodge, because as a past master, if I'm like, oh, what's on your trestle board? Like, what do you have coming up? Oh, you should come and visit us. Why? Well, because we have well, what are you doing for your next meeting? Well, we have a bit boring. I'm not coming. I'm not coming to just sit in your lodge. I'm sorry. I love you. It's great. But I'm not going to be, you have to be better than Netflix. You got to beat Netflix for me that night. Because that's the competition, sadly, that we face with so many things. So that's the other challenge too. Like, you don't have to go out and book big name Masonic authors or speakers that travel around the country. And nothing against those guys. They're great. If you can get them to come to your lodge, that's fantastic. Aces, wonderful. It doesn't always have to be that. Some of the best lodge programs I've literally gone to is a simple question that everybody in the room gets to answer, or a discussion that evolves from a point that somebody makes that might not even have anything to do with Freemasonry, but hearing the brothers able to tie it into life in Freemasonry and weave that little fabric, that's what makes it. We could sit there all night and I wouldn't complain about the length of that meeting.
And if you know anybody, not to be the plug guy, but if you know anybody who's looking to create those experiences, I have a bunch of resources on the Mason's Work website and Patreon for those kind of like, how do you facilitate a discussion in the lodge? Because we've never done that before.
Can I plug one of your things?
Sure.
The Masonic Reflection Deck. Can I just say right now, look, if I was a member, to our listener, and if you are a Freemason, I love you and thank you, brother. But if I was a member of your lodge at your next stated communication, I would stand up and say, Worshipful Master, I move that we purchase a Masonic Reflection Deck for our lodge to be personally inscribed for our lodge to be used as a Masonic education tool for our lodge and its members. And I want to hear a second. And let's get a second and let's do it, because it's the best $200 investment. And I told you this before we even started taping. It is the best $200 investment as a brother that you can do for yourself and for your lodge and for others. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to one of his episodes where he talks about it. You can see it on the website. Dude, it's more than just a little 3D printed cool Masonic symbols game or something. The uses for it are infinite, and the ability to use it with guys that are coming through the degrees, or just as a great meeting that you can put on a trestle board for your lot. Like I'm saying, man, it is one of the coolest ideas. The second coolest idea that I ever saw that was not a Masonic program is my lodge in DC. We actually have a Masonic escape room that we've turned our lodge into.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Yes. Which plays off the symbols. There's a little storyline that's involved. You don't have to be a Mason to play the game. We actually use it for when we have visitors that come in. But find ways to be out of the box, creative and engaging.
My lodge secretary is going to freak out when I tell him you have one of these. He's been wanting to build an escape room in our lodge for a long time.
Oh, have him come to St. John's number 11 in DC. We meet on the first Friday of the month. And better yet, I can even put him in touch.
I can't do that with my secretary, because if he doesn't get out, I'm screwed.
Well, they're not brothers. The guys that built this for us are based in Pennsylvania. So it's probably a hop, skip, and a jump for where you are. Yeah.
So I want to have you on the podcast again, or whatever we're calling this. It's out on YouTube. I want to have you back. The things that you've learned in your journey, and just the sheer exposures you've had, bringing these explorers back out from the field and sharing their knowledge and expertise and the things they've learned in their journey, I think puts you in a unique position to really share a lot with my audience, which is looking for the practical applications of this stuff so that they can go out and be a stronger and better change agent in the world. So thank you, Right Worshipful Brother Arce. I am super excited for this episode to hit the street, as well as for the opportunity to continue to collaborate. Thank you.
Dude, it means a lot, because I say I get excited for every guest and episode that I do. But when you have the ones that you can't wait for others to see because the information was just so good, like chef's kiss. So thank you. And yes, I will continue to email bomb you with guests and people and brothers that you need to meet.
Perfect. Thank you so much.